terms of today's topic, we're going to be talking about creativity and productivity in design, obviously looking at the kind of the avenue of how AI is going to help enhance that. So hopefully some useful tips, some inspiration, a couple of tools we're going to look at, some very quick use cases, things that are personally kind of exciting people in the design industry, and some final kind of key takeaways as well. So as mentioned, my name is Amit Patel. I'm the creative director at Experience House. We are essentially a design education and consultancy based out of Shoreditch here in London. So I'm in our studio at the moment. We basically offer training courses in what we call design education. So for both individuals in terms of our B2C offering, but also to corporate. So underpinning all of our courses are kind of hundreds of different modules that we can then shape into a corporate offering for all different types of organizations. And the type of training that we provide, includes lots of stuff around experience design. So UI, user research, UX, UI, design leadership, service design is very hot at the moment, innovation, entrepreneurship. We are actually launching our AI courses this week, potentially tomorrow. So we have a 5-day course and a 1-day kind of more like an intro kind of talk workshop as well. We've kind of been waiting to see kind of what happens with the AI space, but now we're launching specifically our 5-day course, which will include AI and experience design, featuring a live project as well. And as I mentioned, we work with lots of different companies. So we work with Bayer Pharmaceuticals, PwC, Spotify, Amazon to deliver training to them. And just trying to make sure that what we are delivering as industry is relevant. And as we all know, and which I'm sure, which is one of the reasons you're all here today, AI is at the forefront of everyone's minds. What's happening with it? What's going to happen with my role? How do I use it more? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. And at the moment, a couple of the companies that we're working with work in the financial services and insurance space. They're using design thinking, they're using AI, they're looking at process reimagination. So again, that combination of design thinking, service design, AI, personally for me, and as we're seeing it from the companies that we're working with at the moment, is definitely something that is at the forefront of everyone giving that attention at the moment. So in terms of today's talk, quite excited to have you with us. You know, it's such a fast moving talk and so many things are happening in this space. So hopefully we can give you a bit of inspiration, name some particular tools, look at some particular use cases. I've kind of left it a little bit open in terms of, you all might be coming from design in many, many different ways. But essentially what we're going to be talking about is AI in design and kind of the benefits of it, how you can use it to boost your productivity and enhance your creativity, which we're all, I'm sure, looking to try and do as designers. Some real life world applications, which I'll talk about as well, in terms of one particular one, which I didn't even realize through using it actually had been generated by AI. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. And of course, some kind of learning, some key takeaways in terms of some future trends, and hopefully some action points for you to take forward as well. So some of you may be familiar with Tim Brown. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with IDEO. Tim Brown is the CEO of IDEO, one of the companies that is largely kind of maybe credited or is, it definitely is design thinking is associated with them. And I love this quote: AI is not just a tool, it's a new way of thinking about design. And I something that we're kind of really talking to our incoming students here at Experience House, and a lot of our incoming students are just like yourselves, people that are either very, in depth with their kind of career or looking to pivot in some cases, or in some cases, curious newbies to the space. But it's something that we need to leverage. It's something that's not going away. And this is something that's actually going to change the way that a lot of us actually do our design work. And I've got a few more points around that as well. But one of the challenges is things are moving very, very, very fast. Just this week, ChatGPT, of course, one of the most popular kind of tools that is out there, recently, launched some new updates. I haven't even had a chance to play with that yet. A lot of the tools that we're using, it's just, there's so many updates, there's so many progressive things happening in the space. New tools are coming. I think a lot of the tools are not mature yet. For a particular one, I think in terms of the slides, getting slides and presentations, I personally haven't found a tool that's just yet where I want it to be. But I have no doubt that this is going to happen in the very near future. And I think this point here is that it's kind of scary how fast things are moving, right? I recently had my birthday in March. I have a degree in mathematics, so I learned about all different types of data science and algorithms and all the different things that are kind of now playing a pivotal role in the way that we're prepping the data for these AI experiences. But even I woke up thinking I've worked in design and tech, and I feel like I know nothing in this space. I feel like there's so much happening so quickly. How do you stay on top of everything? No one's saying you have to go and learn everything, but definitely should be aware of these tools and how they can benefit you to hopefully make the most of how you can work in a more efficient way as well. So to kind of kickstart things, what can AI essentially help us with? There are many, many benefits, and I'll talk more benefits as we get a little bit more specific in terms of productivity and creativity. But ultimately, one of the biggest things is its efficiency. It's handling a lot of those repetitive tasks that as designers, we don't necessarily want to be doing. The reason why we're brought in to work on particular projects or work within companies is to focus more on those strategic and creative aspects. That's where value is for us, right? Of course, and then balancing that with the business goals and business objectives. We don't want to get caught up with some of the repetitive work that sometimes has to happen. AI can definitely take that away from us. Of course, data-driven insights. You may be going off and doing a huge research piece where you need to then look for trends and start to see what behaviors are coming out of that, and then how you can use that to inform design decisions. We're working with a financial services company at the moment where we're doing a bit of training and a bit of user research with them, and we're going to be using some of these tools later on in the month to start to look at some of those insights rather than for us to kind of go away and look at some of those trends manually. This is a huge benefit for us as well. And of course, scalability, design processes, complex problem, large projects that are taking over in many of the kind of the work that we're doing. AI can help, and AI tools can help scale those processes so that we can actually take on these larger projects and more complex problems as well. Again, delivering value back to the businesses that we're working with or the consultancies that are taking on these projects as well. What this means is that there is a huge opportunity, and we're already seeing it, for AI to integrate into our current workflows. Now, looking at this slide, you may actually my workflow doesn't even kind of necessarily align to that. That's not necessarily the case, and that's really the point here. But if you go from everything from research to ideation to conceptualization to design to prototyping to testing through to final execution, there are tools that are now helping us to start to do a lot of these in much more kind of efficient in ways, right? And one of the points that I'll kind of talk about later on is I firmly believe that the creativity, the human creativity, still has a massive role here. These tools aren't going to take that away from us, but they can help us work a little bit smarter and a little bit more efficiently. So these tools, as I mentioned, can help us analyze this data, look for trends, review a competitor analysis to inform kind of what a design brief might be. It can help us in generating wireframes and creating mock-ups, speeding up the design process, speeding up ideation. It can automate user testing. You can start to kind of look at some of that data that we're sending in terms of transcripts to give us some better insights and to ultimately kind of then give us some feedback to facilitate that iteration that's so key to the design process. And then, of course, when we actually start looking at that final execution, whether it be in terms of wireframes or maybe something that's been developed, optimizing some of those elements for performance, for accessibility, for further testing, looking at user engagement. I'm sure a lot of you have already started to see some of the benefits of these tools as well. So there's no doubt that AI is starting to become integrated into the workflow. You may not have had an opportunity to start using some of the tools that are out there, but this is only going to continue. And again, I think part of this talk is to make sure that you are aware of some of these opportunities and to also start to experiment, to be curious about how these tools can help you as well. So not only just inside the design industry is this getting a little bit scary. We're now looking at some of the methods, the tools, the kind of the workshops, the way that we approach our work, and we're starting to see AI come in and play a pivotal role in terms of our workflow. It's no wonder that people are worried, and it's been at the forefront for many, many years. It's not something that's new, but we are starting to get worried a little bit about job disruption. I remember I did a talk about 7 or 8 years ago, and somebody asked me at the end of the talk, and I think it was just basically an intro to UX around 8 years ago. And somebody asked me, like, what's happening with AI and how's that going to interrupt my job? And I said to her at that time, I don't think it's going to. I think there's a lot of works that still needs to happen. Of course, that's still kind of the case, and I still firmly believe that. But there is almost this element that you have to start engaging with these tools and to work smarter and to work more efficiently, so that these job disruptions don't eventually kind of happen as well. So as designers, we need to leverage AI to help us work more efficiently rather than harder. I was talking with one of our instructors who teaches UI here with us at Experience House, and we were talking about this exact point. It's about working smarter now. It's working more efficiently and leveraging these tools in the best way to help us in all of your different roles, either synthesizing research or to kickstart some ideation or to whatever it is, to kind of create artifacts, to create artwork, to allow you to kind of get to that next step a little bit quicker and a little bit smarter as well. And as Yves Behar, the founder and CEO of the think tank and design firm Fuse Project, has mentioned, AI in design is about enhancing human creativity. This isn't going to replace it. Okay, this is about your creativity still remaining in place and enhancing it with these tools as well. So what I'm going to start with first is some of obviously the most commonly known tools. I'm not going to try and make this talk very much around going into the individual tools and benefits, but I'm going to showcase a few that are out there as well. But where we typically start is obviously ChatGPT, right? It's a large language model. I'm sure many of you have already started to use it in your own work. I'm using it in many, many different ways. It's become a very, very powerful assistant in a way for help me kind of capturing thoughts, generating questions, thinking about potential kind of posts that I might want to share. I don't necessarily, I'm sure many of you don't necessarily just copy and paste it over, but it's definitely a great starting point for many, many different use cases. But of course, this is in itself is moving very fast. As I mentioned earlier, it in itself has had an update in the last week or so. I haven't even had a chance to play with that or what's come out of that as well. But this is definitely something that is not going away and is obviously being used by many, many people at the moment. Probably the most popular one at the moment. And of course, you get then Midjourney, which is, again, another great image generation tool. You're based on Discord. Many people are using this now to save money on kind of getting renders done. Here at Experience House, we work with startups all the time. And we recently worked with one startup that is basically building a kind of a recycling food ecosystem within supermarkets. And they were using a company to render images for them. I told them about Midjourney. They signed up to the $10 a month subscription, and now they're rendering all their images themselves, right? So obviously a huge savings there for them. Huge opportunity for them to be much more kind of in control of some of the prompts that are going into this as well. Obviously, there's a whole talk around what kind of prompts make these tools work well. But again, one of the tools that is so easy to get going with and can definitely help you in many, many different ways as well. So when we turn our attention to, obviously, away from just those two common used tools, and as designers, we're starting to think about our workflow, how can we start to kind of boost our productivity? And as I mentioned, we want to be able to automate some of these repetitive and time-consuming tasks. And we want to work on those higher-level creative and strategic activities. That's what we as designers want to do. We don't want to be doing these things like these time-consuming tasks. We want to be doing the creative and strategy work. And this is where AI can massively help us get to that point where we're able to really leverage these tools and really maximize our output as well. It helps us work much faster. It helps us work more consistently as well. Uniform application of design elements. And of course, accuracy. Once you start getting those routine or repetitive tasks in place, of course, it does get a bit repetitive. There is a chance of human error, but this is where AI can reduce that and make sure that our layouts are consistent, that imagery editing isn't taking as long as it used to. We've got stuff like Sensei and Adobe that's built into the Creative Cloud and is a helping hand in many different ways. But of course, this is where so many benefits: speed, consistency, accuracy. And if you read this and you're not leveraging AI tools right now, you're probably thinking, well, I need to actually get on this as well. The problem is there's a lot out there. So do make sure that you are kind of looking at which ones are actually going to be the best useful and best use for you as well. So the first two tools I want to kind of talk about very, very quickly. And again, I recognize with time, we can't go into every single tool. Some of you may have played with these as well. Is sketch to code, so generating hand-drawn sketches into HTML code. So again, if you've got some paper sketches and moving them into digital prototypes, massive tool. I think this is a Microsoft tool. I played a little bit more with UiZard, which is transforming those kind of sketches again into digital prototypes using AI. Again, for creating very, very quick concepts, I think digital and turning them to quick digital prototypes, just as a kind of a quick ideation and to showcase maybe to stakeholders who are a bit unfamiliar with the tool. These tools are very, very, very useful. So this is a quick look at Sketch to Note. It can take your hand-drawn sketches and then turn them into kind of digital wireframes in HTML, CSS very, very quickly. And of course, UiZard, which I played a little bit more with. It's not perfect. I don't think any of these perfect tools are just yet there. Obviously, we're moving very, very fast. But again, if you're looking at how do I take hand-drawn sketches and then turn them into a quick digital prototype that I could use maybe to build a quick big business case or to showcase to some stakeholders, these tools are there and are very, very easy to ultimately use as well, okay? And very quickly, a couple of other tools that I actually want to show as well. Magma Studio, an AI-powered collaborative design platform. This is more for kind of facilitating some of that real-time collaboration, especially on version control and getting feedback. You've got Deep Art, if some of you are kind of looking at, hey, I need potentially something that looks particularly like a particular brand or a famous artist type of work, you can use AI to transform those photos into some of that artwork. Obviously, there's a lot of questions around who owns that output, if you're being inspired by a well-known artist. I'm not going to go into all that detail. I know it's a very sticky kind of conversation. But again, if you're looking for some unique visual content, either for a branding and marketing campaign, Deep Art is a very, very useful tool as well. You've got Artisto, AI-driven video editing, which is now starting to look at artistic effects to some of those videos as well. Okay, one of the tools I'm personally very fascinated with what's going to happen with video generation, and very excited to kind of see what happens with Sora. I think obviously it's still maturing and it will continue to only get better and better and better. Definitely some disruption and some scary opportunities kind of coming up there as well. But again, these tools as a kind of a helping point to get you to some better outputs are very useful. And then finally, Fronty, taking some images, sort of design mock-ups and turning them into functional web pages can definitely help as well. One of the things here, though, is you're going to have to do, and I've certainly seen it myself, you're going to have to do some due diligence on the output and where they are. Not all of these are yet mature. Not yet all of these are going to be ready for you to kind of say, actually, I now have something as a starting point for me to take forward. I was playing around with a tool over the weekend called InVideo, which was suggested to us by our SEO team. And I played around with it. I don't think yet it's where I would be happy with it to kind of use it as a tool of curating branded campaigns, but I can definitely see the use cases in terms of other kind of learning material or kind of other learning video as well. So my caveat at the moment, and I think someone has put a question around ChatGPT Plus versus Midjourney. I'm definitely more Midjourney at the moment, although I think ChatGPT Plus will kind of get a little bit better. I'm a bit more kind of happy with what Midjourney generates and how I can use prompting with that. That's my personal view at the moment, but things change all the time. I'm also not using them every single day like some other people might be. So they could maybe speak a little bit differently to that. But in terms of what I need it for in my workflow, I'm learning more toward Midjourney. And in terms of other tools, I'm still kind of making sure that the output is still what I kind of need it to be for me to have a good starting point off of it. That is why one of the points as well is slides. Like I would love to have a tool that could create great slides. If anyone has a recommendation, please do share. I just haven't been happy enough with the starting point of what it's generating and where it's like, and because I would like something that's a little bit more branded to also come out of it. But there's no doubt that within 3 or 4 or 5 months, that is going to happen. And that's where you've just got to be aware of these tools, see as they mature and they get better and better and better, that all of a sudden it's going to have that great output that comes in that allows you to really kind of go with it as well. And I think that's where ChatGPT has massively helped. It's given us that starting point for us to then take that work and then obviously to rework it as well. We used to have a PR company that helped a lot with our kind of public relations, helping with posts, etc. We no longer needed them because ChatGPT essentially replaced that for us. It was much quicker for us to give ChatGPT those prompts moving forward as well. So again, looking at some of those kind of early stage creative tools, then you can start to look at some of the benefits of AI-driven prototyping. Again, I think this is a massive, massive opportunity for those of you who are UX, UI designers, service designers, etc. the efficiencies and freeing up your time to be more creative in exploration, the collaboration opportunities to work on prototypes simultaneously and to provide get quick feedback and quick alignment on some of the work as well. And obviously the quality that's going to come out of it is going to be improved as well, leading to better effective user testing. And ultimately what we all want is better final products as well. So that consistency, that speed, that realism, that's ultimately going to come as these tools mature, is really where things are going to be so exciting for us. At the same time, scary because of how much work it can actually do for us. And for us, we really need to learn how to leverage that and to make best use of all of this as well. Some of you may have used Framer in the past. I think that this is one of the tools that is definitely leading the way in generating and publish your site. It's got some great starting points, prompt-driven ways of actually getting your first site up and running. If you are a startup or an entrepreneur looking to get a marketing site or a landing page site up your site, it's amazing how quickly you can do this now with the AI tools. Before you had to use things like, maybe like a Squarespace or Wix, but even Wix now is integrating AI into their solutions as well. Why? Because things can happen so much quicker as well. So again, my recommendation would be to play around with these tools, see what's coming out of it, and just keep your eye on what's happening as well. Now, in terms of boosting your creativity, again, what the tools can help us with, just like the Midjourneys, the ChatGPT Plus, the Runways, for example, they can help us generate a wide array of options based on these initial parameters and prompts that can ultimately give us a lot more kind of creative direction and perspective as well. So much quicker for us to actually take that input. We are going to use that input that's provided to us that output that's provided to us by these tools, and then use our human creativity to take that with our own intuition and our own business goals and objectives to take that moving forward. But this generation of outputs has never been quicker, and it's only going to get better and better. Where I'm personally, and again, I was just talking to somebody from our team today in terms of, she was doing some user research, looking at vast amounts of data. The transcripts are going to be a little bit messy. We do have recordings. We're going to be conducting about 20 or 25 user interviews. How can we start to plug in some of this data to start looking for patterns and trends that may not be immediately apparent to us, but also which is going to take us quite a long time to actually generate as well. So some of these tools are going to be so useful in terms of, again, speeding up that speed. So again, just to kind of step back into a bit of a creative element, you may want to look at generating lots of different ideas for unique artworks and exploring new visual styles and ideas. You could check out Artbreeder, so characters, artworks, anything else that might actually kind of come together by mixing images and text together. You're creating kind of visual inspiration like you've never done before. You may use it for a branding exercise, for example, as well. Runway is probably one of the biggest. I should have probably included it alongside ChatGPT and Midjourney. This is a platform that is also starting to really take off and is providing lots of different models for creative applications. Images and video synthesis, image to text, video to text to video type of stuff, object detection and kind of separating out a segmentation of objects, really helping us as designers to experiment more with the effects and transformations in our work as well. So definitely check out Runway. We have a partnership with a design agency. We share our studio, and this is one of the tools that they are also using a lot more as well. As you can see, what's so exciting about this space, a lot of these tools are being given to us by AI research companies. The research is not going to stop. Human creativity is only going to be enhanced with these AI tools. You have to definitely stay on top of this as well. If any of you are creating music or creating, again, branding or marketing collateral that might need some unique music, you could use Amper Music. It's an AI music composition tool that looks at defined parameters and prompts and then provides custom soundtracks for videos and presentations. I actually used Amper to generate a 15-second intro for our podcast, for example, right? So you may want to check out Amper Music as well, okay? And then finally, if any of you have a podcast or are creating podcasts, we have just recently started doing our own podcast. We've done about 4 or 5 episodes so far. And I think this was fascinating. One of the challenges we had with podcasts was, what's the productivity time? Sorry, what is the production time, right? Do we have to hire somebody in? Do we have to have somebody on hand once the recording has happened to actually then create that output for us, right? But then Riverside came along with their AI editing tool. So now I can invite somebody into the studio. We mostly do audio. I can record all of it. And then I have an AI editing tool, which provides a transcript, which I can then edit and take out spaces. I can take out blocks of text. And all of a sudden, it creates an automatic audio track for me, which then I can export out and plug it straight into Spotify. I no longer need a production team. I no longer need to wait for that production to come back to me. I can do it myself. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes very quickly to produce that output, if not quicker. And all of a sudden, I have something that's ready to go out into the world, right? So again, if any of you are thinking about a podcast, or maybe even been on a podcast and they're using Riverside, huge chance that they're probably using the Riverside AI tool to help you with this, right? So as creatives, we all know that it's not just about our methods and tools that we're using. We have to get our brands out there. We have to, we have to create these podcasts and articles and blogs and things like that. These tools can massively help with all of this output as well. So certainly, this is one of my favorite use cases at the moment. So again, innovation, looking at kind of breaking away from traditional patterns, the efficiency that can come in and generate more alternatives for us, and collaboration and augmenting our creative process and the way we work with others is so useful as well. I also want to kind of step away and start looking at a couple of now use cases as well, right? And what's happening in the everyday. For example, Nike. Many of you may be kind of looking at trainers and how you enjoy trainers as well. Nike used a lot of generative design. They were inspired by tools like Midjourney and ChatGPT Plus to actually create the Nike Flightbook, which is a 3D printed shoe. The upper is 3D printed. So the AI driven, right? And then trying to look at the material to enhance how athletes can better use it for performance and comfort. And you can see John Hoke here, the Chief Designer Officer at Nike. Generative design allows us to explore solutions that we wouldn't have found through traditional methods. Quicker, more exploration that you then apply the human creativity onto to then create these unique outputs as well. I'm from Toronto. I was born in Toronto, and Autodesk is obviously a well-known company in the 3D the software space. They've actually used generative design to develop their workspace in their new Toronto office. So they're looking at layouts, how they can best kind of use the acoustics and sounds, employee collaboration, natural light, and they've actually created and designed their entire workspace and studio using generative design inputs, okay? So again, AI-enabled generative design helps us push the boundaries of innovation. Again, this stuff is now really inspiring the way that we're actually using not only digital outputs or creating digital outputs, but physical outputs as well, right? So it's an amazing opportunity that we're part of as well. This is the one that I personally am so fascinated by. I don't know if many of you used or watched the New York Times, but or read the New York Times rather, but I've always really enjoyed, especially during COVID, I really enjoyed their infographics and their data visualizations. Always wondered what was behind it, what was being used to actually create some of these outputs as well. This one example is the one that I found that actually would fit the screen the best, and you can obviously see there's lots of kind of like people that are involved, kind of showing kind of, who's kind of essentially running America at the moment, and the data visualizations at the bottom. What's fascinating about this is that they're actually using AI to help with this infographic creation, okay? So leveraging AI to automate the creation of these graphics. They're looking at the tools, are using the data sets or analyzing the data sets to create those visual representations that are definitely visual appealing, right? So it's processing the data, it's actually looking at the patterns and the correlations in the data. Then the tools are actually creating the draft visualizations, and then designers go on top of that and then refine them and customize them to match up with editorial standards and branding, anything that's coming out from the New York Times as well. So what's helping with this is that they're massively generating these very quickly. They're high quality visuals, and there's a very an enhanced ability to actually communicate complex data. Right? So I'm not sure exactly what tools were used to help with this. I was just fascinated by actually the use case of this, which I actually wouldn't have thought about myself to actually kind of create those as well. So I'm going to do a little bit more digging deeper into this. And as you can see here, Steve Duenas, who's the graphics director, he's also mentioned that they're using data this AI to actually create these visual stories with greater speed and accuracy. And now the New York Times is actually putting visualizations and data graphics into so much of their output as well. So for user research purposes, and I can see a few questions that are in there, and I will definitely get to them in just a second. Almost wrapped up. Give me 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll get to some of those questions. In terms of kind of looking at research now, and again, some of you might be user researchers looking at this. This is now where you can start to use some of these tools to actually analyze data and to start to look for those trends as well. So looking at feedback analysis, looking at post-survey data processing, looking at kind of how to look at what support mechanism or support needs to be helping as well. One of the tools is Monkey-Learn. So you may want to have a look at that, especially if you're kind of looking at feedback or user research information. Earlier asked a message around what tools I'm currently using. So the tools that I'm using the most of at the moment in terms of AI, I use ChatGPT a lot. Midjourney just when I need to in terms of rendering images, although I do think there's a big opportunities for in terms of our brand to start using Midjourney more, better kind of branded outputs in terms of posters and things like that, working with our designer. I use Riverside a lot. That is a big tool for me in terms of our podcast. I use ChatGPT a lot on my mobile phone. Actually, I find it super useful when I've got something in my mind that I can actually jump into ChatGPT on the mobile. So that's just something that I'm using a lot, and probably the one that I'm probably using the most. One of the things I'm most interested in is text to video. So being able to put in prompts and creating video outputs. That's why when Sora was announced, and Runway is obviously around, haven't used Runway a lot for that yet, but that is one that I'm very, very interested to see how we could use that in some of our work as well. One of the tools that we're about to start using, and I played around with a little bit, is this one right here, which is Dovetail. So at the moment, somebody from our team is conducting a whole bunch of user research with a company that we're working with in the financial and services space. We're starting to prepare the transcripts to upload into Dovetail to start to look for trends and clusters of those trends, right? And so it'd be fascinating if like a week from now or 2 weeks from now, we could kind of share what our experience of that was. But this is the tool that we're going to be using for all of that as well. I'm sure there are other AI tools that I'm using that I may not even use. Obviously, we're benefiting from AI in terms of like Spotify and Netflix. But at the moment, I definitely am probably using AI a lot more, ChatGPT plus a lot more at the moment. I've also started to play around with building our own bot in ChatGPT, where I'm looking at loading up a lot of our learning material in terms of user research learning material so that our students have an assistant to help them outside of class time, right? So again, once our students are outside of class time and they don't have access to an instructor, we would like to have something where they can ask questions to something like a ChatGPT, although it'll be kind of preloaded with our learning content to get them feedback or to give them insight on how to approach a research challenge. So I'm very interested in kind of the education assistive area and looking at tools, how we can help start planning some of that out as well. So those are the kind of use cases I'm really particularly interested in at the moment. And of course, then the video stuff, I think we also want to look at a lot more in detail as well. As I mentioned, I think something that will be very, very useful, although I haven't seen yet something that's mature enough as a starting point from the output, is the slide design aspect. And I think that will be something where if it's branded and has the right content, I'd be very interested to kind of see how we could use that to speed up some of our work as well. So in closing, what does the future hold? There's no doubt that the tools, and it's often difficult to start naming a bunch of tools. So there's so many out there, and so many new things are coming to the space. But there's no doubt that we're going to have to start combining our creative skills with our technical skills. We're going to need a bit of a blend. I don't think you necessarily need to go off and massively learn a bunch of coding, but learning some of the kind of the data analysis, learning things like Python to potentially help you and understand the use cases will be very, very useful. The ability to look at AI-generated insights and how to use them creatively in your work will also be key. and also being able to use and rely on AI to handle that data analysis and trend identification and creative brainstorming, and the willingness to let it be part of your workflow is going to be very important as well. And so it's a great question that somebody asked in terms of how I use it. I'm definitely really keen to start using it more and more and more. So I'm just looking for the right tools along the way. I'm always kind of interested. I'll always try something. If it's not yet given me the output that I need it to be in terms of my workflow, then I'll park it and come back to it, because I know that the products are going to get better and better and better. And of course, in terms of our literacy as designers, and I'm sure this is one of the reasons why you're here, understanding how AI works and how to leverage it more efficiently and effectively in your workflow. And as part of that, more courses and training programs are going to start focusing more on AI. We are launching our own AI courses and workshops this week. We're building a 5-day course that leverages about 20% design thinking, 20% service design, and 60% AI and future technologies to help understand how to build effective AI experiences moving forward, but also the ethical implications, the risks, the biases, all of that. Obviously, we can't go into all of that today as well, but that's going to be key as well. And just understanding, what are the use cases? What are kind of the technical implications? How does data play a role? And how do we help prepare some of that data? Any of this is only going to enhance your skill set and understanding in terms of those future projects that you're going to be working on as well. In terms of roles might change. I don't think they're going to be massively disrupted, but they're definitely going to have to be leveraged and changed as well. So you may get into this AI specialist designer type of role, who's somebody who's really kind of specialized in looking at how a company works with processes and workflows. It's probably an extra step in the design maturity kind of matrix. How do you integrate AI tools in all of that? How do you use data and AI insights to inform design decisions? So it's somebody who's a little more AI data driven, and somebody who works alongside of these AI systems to co-create and innovate. AI collaborator, somebody that's kind of, it's part of your skill set, no doubt. How can you make sure that's really part of that workflow moving forward? And some of you may have heard of John Maeda. The future of design is symbiotic with AI. It's not going anywhere. So we now have to really harness this and blend human creativity with machine intelligence and make sure that we are pushing the boundaries of innovation moving forward, right? And he's the vice president of design and AI at Microsoft. All of these companies are doing something in this space. No one is not. And so it's going to be a fascinating time to kind of watch what comes out. Again, my advice to everyone is start playing around with the tools, start learning around this stuff. It's not going anywhere. And the more that you can leverage in your work, the better as well. And as I mentioned, the one tool that I'm really eager to try is Sora. I still think it's in beta. I saw it announced about a month or 6 weeks ago, and I saw the videos that it's already producing. But I'm really, really fascinated to start trying this because I think there's a huge opportunity for us to kind of leverage this in terms of education and learning material. Obviously, start to kind of think about the prompts that it's going to need. But I'm fascinated to kind of see what comes out of this. The quality that I saw before was unbelievable. So really fascinated to see kind of what more complex prompting can do to help this as well. So in closing, just to kind of hopefully leave you with a bit of inspiration, AI integration is becoming an essential part of the workflow, and it's enhancing our creativity and productivity. We must develop skills to stay relevant in this AI-enhanced design landscape. It's not going anywhere. We must keep pushing it forward. And of course, it's the combination of creativity and AI that's really going to push innovation and design excellence forward. There's another element coming to the design maturity kind of matrix that's coming, no doubt about it. And there's huge opportunities for your roles to be enhanced as well. So yeah, that's everything from me today. I hope that's been useful. And I think we have time for some questions. So let me open up the chat very quickly. Okay, so Katja, then what you mentioned in terms of my workflow. Yeah, so I mentioned I use ChatGPT a lot at the moment. It's a massive tool. I use it in all types of cases, right? I'm using it to kind of generate questions for panels that I'm hosting. I'm using it to generate ideas for kind of talking points or probes. I'm using it for, I have friends who are using it a lot in diagnosing code, for example. I don't do any coding, but that's obviously a huge use case for engineers. I had a good friend of mine in Canada who's been coding all his life, and he was telling me, like, some of these coding challenges that he can put towards ChatGPT and it solves it in 5 minutes for him rather than spending 3 days. And he still has people in his team who are very reluctant to use it because they don't feel the need for it. But that time spent or time waste is huge, right? So again, Riverside FM, I'm obviously working in the education space predominantly right now. That is kind of where I'm using it the most. Again, where I'm really very fascinated is slides. Like I would love to be able to kind of create talking points and get slides made. I'm not expecting it to be perfect at all, but I would love it to be more of an assistive tool. I think there's really great stuff that's happening in the kind of the financial forecasting space as well. In fact, I might actually mention a tool. A friend of mine, he's built a tool called Causal. I think it's causal.ai. It's a financial forecasting tool using AI to kind of help leverage that. It's grown a lot in the last 3-4 years. Definitely check that out. They've got use cases. You can plug in some data and play around with that. Fascinating tool to start playing around with as well. And yeah, I think I'm very curious. I'm definitely going to check out what else is happening in this kind of space as well. In terms of data visualization, I think the two that I've played around with just to kind of see I think there's one called Domo and one called Rose. So I think someone mentioned that. Hamish, you mentioned the question. So I don't know what New York Times are using, but I think there's one called Domo and there's another one called Rose.ai, I think it is. These are two tools that I would probably have a start to play around with. I'm fascinated to know what they're using in the New York Times, but those are tools. Katja, in terms of slides, Pitch is doing some. Yeah, so Pitch, great for example. That's a good example. Pitch, I think, is probably the best one. They just had a big investment round, maybe about a year ago, 6 months ago, something like that. I think Pitch is probably the best one. But when I was using Pitch, it obviously was generating the templates. The next level will be for me to give it a bunch of talking points and it generating something for me. So if Pitch is able to do that or is coming up soon, again, I would go back to that. But we run a lot of incubator and accelerator programs for universities, and we'd usually recommend Pitch to them as a starting point because, let's face it, they'll start using Google Slide templates. They'll create it like a PowerPoint template. These tools, they're behind now. Pitch is definitely something I would recommend as a starting point. Good slide template, slide design structure, like you mentioned as well. And then Yvette, how to train AI correctly. What are the right prompts? All right, this is a huge kind of area to get into as well. In fact, we'll probably have a talk coming up this summer. Ewa, I could probably share the link with you once we have it. We have a fantastic young designer who works in our agency who's done an amazing talk on prompting and then using it to show you how you can actually generate an entire podcast using someone's voice or entire brand off of like 4 or 5 points as well. And to be honest, this is something I'm just constantly trying to get better at as well. Like that's why I love actually playing around with Midjourney so much. Somebody asked earlier what I prefer to play around. I like using Midjourney because it's the prompting that generates the output, right? And so learning how to leverage that better. I've almost gotten to the case now where I'm kind of just having conversations with ChatGPT and getting it to help me as well, which I actually really enjoy because of the speed. But I think the prompting side of things is definitely, it's a whole nother area. I'll definitely share with you when we're doing that talk around prompt engineering. I think it's a fascinating interactive talk as well. What I sometimes do is you'll often see on LinkedIn, people are sharing out kind of their prompts, kind of little diagrams of that. I always save them. I play around with them as well, because ultimately I'm just trying to see how I can leverage some of those prompts in the best way as possible. Scary thing is I'm probably doing 3% or 1% of the capability of it. And I think that's also what's so fascinating about this space as well.
And as Amit mentioned, Experience House is also running their own events, and I will share a couple of links on our Slack channel if you would like to find out a little bit more, I will send the feedback form with some more information as well tomorrow, in case you want to hear a bit more. So apart from just leaving the review of the talk, if there is something specific regarding AI that you would like to learn, let us know so that we can run another talk. And if you're available tomorrow and you don't have an event overload yet, we are running a lunchtime talk on using LinkedIn to promote your services as a freelancer.